Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is a newly crowned IFBB Women's Physique Pro, and she's also the 2022 Women's Physique Overall National Champion. Today's guest is Nicole Washington. Nicole, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome, Nicole. So, really looking forward to getting into your story, your history, and learning more about you. But before we get to that point, Nicole, I'd like to know, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
So that's an easy one. My first inspiration was Kai Green, like a lot of other people that have come on your show. But he inspired a lot of the routines that I like to do. And then for a female athlete, Dana Lynn Bailey. I love her. I love her personality. Um, she kicked off the whole women's physique thing, being the first winner. So I was like, ooh, that's awesome. So yeah, those two are my top inspirations.
Excellent. Love it. Okay, so why don't you tell us, Nicole, at what age you started lifting weights, and why did you start lifting weights at that specific age?
Ooh, so I think I started lifting when I was 21. I'm 28 now. So yeah, that's 7 years. And at the time, I had a really good friend who was a power lifter, and he broke all kinds of state records. So he was training one day and he was like, "Why don't you join me?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, whatever." And he taught me how to do a deadlift, and I immediately fell in love. I was like, "Wow, you can lift heavy things and feel strong. Like, this is awesome." So I became obsessed after that.
Hmm. Love it. Cool. Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit more then about your upbringing and your childhood? So, where did you grow up? Did you play sports? What was life like for you, Nicole, when you were younger? Siblings? Did you like school? Did you hate school? Just paint that picture for us a little bit up to about high school, okay?
Sure. So I don't have any siblings. I'm an only child, and I moved around a lot as a child. I was born in Virginia, but I soon moved to Boston, and then we moved out to California for a little bit, my mom and me, and then we moved back to Boston. And from age 6 until 11, I lived in England, in the UK. So I got a lot of like different places growing up. Um, I was in sports. I did swimming from age 5 until I graduated high school. But my main thing in school was music and like performance. So I played piano starting age 5 until um, the end of high school. And then I also played clarinet starting in 7th grade until the end of high school. And I ended up graduating and going to the San Francisco Conservatory of Music for clarinet performance. I only went for 2 years, but that's another story. But I really like school too. I'm a nerd. I read fantasy books. Like I had this nerdy little club of friends, and we would play Pokemon, and we would act out like scenes from our favorite stories. So I've always kind of been interested in fantasy and just I guess drama, art, but I never did like acting or anything. But yeah, and I was in the marching band, so just complete nerd.
Wow, yeah, you were a very well-rounded young lady then, huh?
I think so, yeah. In terms of arts, like sciences, I'm kind of useless, but like anything art related, music, dance. Oh, I forgot. Also, I did ballet from when I was 6 until 9, so 3 years of that. So yeah.
Cool. Okay, now I want to ask you, what was the reason that you moved so much, and how did you guys end up in England of all places?
My dad is a hardware engineer, and he worked for Sun Microsystems, and they had an England branch, so they had some employees over there. And we were lucky enough to be one of the families that was sent out to that branch to kind of manage it. So we were there for 5 years, and I did my elementary school years there, and I loved it. I miss it so much. But then in 2005, I believe, Sun folded, so we had to come back to the Bay Area where I am now.
Okay. Wow. Cool. What in terms of swimming? were you in competitive swimming? And if so, what were kind of your strokes? What was your go-to with the strokes?
Yeah, I did do competitive swimming. I was part of a swim club. My events were the 50 free, the 100 free, the 50 fly, butterfly, and the 100 fly. So I'm a sprinter. I was terrible at long distance. Um, I, but I really enjoy like going quickly. So, and then finishing the race sooner. But yeah, butterfly was really my stroke, which is why I have the proportions I do, really.
Yeah, yeah. That's a tough stroke. I actually was a swim coach for a little while and grew up doing swim team and stuff, and that's a tough stroke. So kudos to you. Now
Thank you.
I want to ask you in terms of kind of like the arts and the music and all that. Is that something that your parents kind of artistic and into music, or is that just something they kind of wanted you to be a well educated, well rounded person, growing up?
So both of my parents are actually they're quite analytical. They don't have talent for music, but my mom bought me a little piano when I was 5, and I ended up figuring out part of like a Beethoven sonata by ear. And so I played it for her and she was like, "Oh, we need to put you in music immediately." So she kind of pushed me a little bit, but I really wanted to do music just because music it just always has been something that grounds me and focuses me and my attention is all over the place, but if I'm playing music or there's music playing, like that's how I can focus. So it's just naturally I just was drawn to just any kind of music.
Okay. What's what are some of your favorite bands or artists or what have you in terms of kind of current day? What's your go-to listen nowadays?
So I listen to this is very, very specific. It doesn't really have a name, but it's a subset of EDM. So I think you would call it like down tempo, or I've heard like down tempo, dark house, deep house, that kind of stuff. But my favorite artist is Andy Stott, and he's out of Manchester in the UK. And I use one of his tracks for my finals routine, and I really love that song. I planned it for a year. I knew I wanted to do it, but yeah, so it's just kind of that music. It's not really well known, so yeah.
Awesome. Um, so now it sounds like your parents obviously were pretty, positive, strong influences in your life when you were growing up. Was there any coaches or teachers or any type of mentors in terms of adults outside of your parents that you looking back, you feel like they really had a positive impact in your life when you were younger?
Yes, my marching band director, Mr. John Byrne, he was my favorite teacher too in high school. He really he was the best teacher. He made a home for all of us in marching band because we're all nerds, and um, he gave us the confidence to be proud of being in the band. And we had a really good band. Like I'm just gonna say it, we were good. We were in the Macy's parade in 2011, I believe. So he inspired all of us to leave areas better than we found them, and just have a really positive attitude when it comes to sportsmanship, because marching band can get kind of, it's groups of kids and we all get into our little rivalries, but he always held us to a standard of just being professional. And I really, really think that that teaching of his, it's helping me now. It really helped me at nationals. I just remember him saying like, leave the area better than you found it, be nice to everybody, don't don't let the negative energy get to you. So him, absolutely.
Cool. Love that. Very cool. Okay. What were your plans in high school, Nicole? Like what were you thinking about as a teenager when you were in high school? Like what did you want to be, quote unquote, when you grew up, when you graduated high school? And then once you graduated high school, how did life kind of unfold? Like just tell us a little bit about college and where kind of life took you right after high school.
So all of high school, I wanted to do music performance. So I really, really focused on music in high school. And I mentioned earlier, I got into the San Francisco Conservatory. The conservatory is the feeder school for the San Francisco Symphony, and I really, really wanted a symphony job because you get to play cool music and you go all over the world, and you just get to represent like a form of music that you just don't really hear anymore. Or if you do, you hear the same like three pieces over and over. And I was really excited to represent that and let people know more about classical music. But when I got to college, it was really, I realized that symphony jobs they are like a once in a decade thing. So when you get into the symphony, you have that position until you die. So the only time there's an opening is if somebody kicks the bucket. And I don't know what it is, but a lot of musicians, classical musicians, they live a long time. So like you may be waiting like 10, 20, 30, 40 years for it, depending on when the person got into the symphony. So I quickly realized that that wasn't really going to work, and or not that it wouldn't work, but I would need an income and a job and everything while I was auditioning. And I left the conservatory after 2 years because it wasn't something I was passionate about anymore. Because the likelihood of getting a job was so small that I thought, well, there's better stuff I can do. Um, so I left the conservatory after 2 years and I transitioned to community college, and I became interested in linguistics, which is the study of language. And then I was thinking, okay, maybe I'll work for the OED, the Oxford English Dictionary, which is literally the dictionary that tells you the history of English. So if you look up a word, you can see all of the prior usages and forms of the word. And it's just like, to me, that's really interesting because then you can see how language evolved and you can kind of get an idea of the culture around the language if you just study the language. So it's cool. Um, but again, OED jobs, same thing. So that didn't really work out. So I graduated with my bachelor's in linguistics. And then honestly, I just did a bunch of odd jobs because I didn't really know what I wanted to do because I was in the same situation twice. And in that time, I found bodybuilding, which kind of gave me a direction and a purpose. And so, like, winning nationals really, it's helped me figure out really what I want to do for the next stage.
Mm. Wow. I gotta say, I've done I've done a ton of podcasts over the years. And this is unique. Your story is very unique with quote unquote what you've said, like being a nerd, right? And then finding bodybuilding. So okay, now you get your bachelor's degree in linguistics, and then you're kind of just doing odd jobs, right? Because we all have to pay bills. We have to do adulting at some point, unfortunately.
Yes.
Now let's start working our way then into Nicole. You had this friend, and he invites you to kind of start lifting with him, and you start deadlifting, and sounds like kind of like powerlifting. So let's start at that point, and then walk us through the evolution of how you kind of got into bodybuilding. Okay.
Yeah. So I did start lifting weights in a powerlifting style. And I was like, great, I can lift heavy and I can eat whatever I want and I'll stay fit. It doesn't work that way. I quickly discovered it does not work that way. You have to pay attention to your diet still. So I was training one day, and at the beginning of my weightlifting career, I would spend like 3 or 4 hours in the gym just learning the machines, learning the proper movements, watching people, like seeing how they did it, and then kind of copying them. But I saw, and her name is Sarah Drake. She was a figure competitor in, I want to say 2018 or 19, but I saw her and I was like, oh my God, who is that woman? She looks so good. She has muscle. Like what? And before I saw her, the only muscular woman I'd ever seen was Linda Hamilton in Terminator 2. And like my favorite scene is when she's doing the pull-ups. And but I just thought that people just did that for movies. I didn't know that was a thing. So when I saw Sarah and her boyfriend, who is a classic physique competitor, I saw them training and I was like, I need to talk to her. But I was really shy. So I kind of just hung around them for like a month before I got the courage to be like, hey, what do you do? Like, why do you look like that? And I know how rude that sounds, but at the time I didn't know. So I spoke to her and she said, "Oh, I compete. I'm a physique competitor." And I got a training session with her and I said, "I want to do what you're doing." And she was like, "Well, if you don't check your diet and, become more disciplined, like you're not going to make it." And I at the time I was like, "Oh, it's kind of negative." But no, it was what I needed to hear because, you can't get by in bodybuilding eating Cheerios, which is what I was doing. And it was the reality check I needed. So after I could only afford one session with her, but after that session, I started researching on my own. And that was when Instagram actually was a huge, huge part of how I found people. So I followed a bunch of people. I followed nutrition advice, fitness tips, and I just slowly started to educate myself. And like I would write my own programs. They were terrible, but I would do that and just experiment in the gym. And I did this for 7 years before I hired a coach. So I had like some knowledge going into my first prep that I think was like, I'm just really glad that I took that long to figure things out. So,
Cool. Okay. Now when you kind of started getting on Instagram and learning on your own, do you remember some of the people on Instagram that you kind of learned from or kind of watched their videos or what have you?
yes, the first competitor I followed, her name is Lacey Dunn. I believe her handle is Fit Fit and Faith or Faith and Fit. It's one of those. But I followed her because she had these crazy shoulders, and I was like, oh, I want those. So I would just find people whose features I really liked and follow them and see what they were doing. Another athlete, Courtney Green, she was a physique competitor. She looked insane, and I was like, I want to look like her. Dalen Bailey. Who else? I'm trying to think. Sarah Drake. Um, I didn't really follow any men because I wasn't interested. Like apart from Kai Green, I thought the men were a little silly. I saw the men's physique division and I was like, what is that? I'm not interested. So I followed a lot of women who were like in this space. And in that time, like I just followed more and more and picked up better tips. And if you really apply yourself and think critically, you can learn a lot from Instagram.
Oh yeah. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. So now, once you kind of started getting interested in kind of like more physique competition, right? As opposed to the powerlifting, did you kind of just leave the powerlifting behind and then just kind of start piecing together your own programs? It sounds like specifically for bodybuilding then, or did you continue to kind of do the powerlifting stuff mixed with the hypertrophy training?
I did the second option. I did like, I guess you would call it power building now. I really, really love doing like 3 and 1 rep maxes. So what I started doing was I would do the big lifts, the squat, bench, deadlift, and then I would just do accessories. So I get that's like a mix. But again, didn't know what I was doing. So I was like, oh, well, it seems like my legs are kind of small. So let me do like what did I do? Something crazy. Like really heavy deadlifts, then hack squats, then something else and something because I didn't know like compound versus isolation. I just did movements that I liked and that felt good. So I gained muscle that way.
Okay. Okay. Now, what was it, do you think, Nicole, like when you kind of first saw this IFBB Pro at your local gym? I mean, what was the attraction to you in regards to kind of like the muscle and that specific physique? Because a lot of females, a lot of ladies, they don't want to get too muscular, too big, right? Like I hear that all the time. I don't want to look like you. So what was it for you that just kind of like attracted you to a more muscular female physique as opposed to maybe just a skinny girl on the elliptical?
So that question has two answers. So the little longer answer is I've always been really stocky. Like I'm 5'2", but I've always been heavy. So high school was kind of difficult for me because I wasn't fat, but I had muscle and I grew muscle very easily. Like our swim team would do workouts and they would say, don't work out, Nicole, because you're going to be too heavy for the water. And it was true. Like if I did any kind of like serious lifting, it just I just got heavy really quickly. So I always kind of, and also I'm not like what you would call like overly feminine. Like I don't like makeup. I didn't learn like all the social games, and like movie stars didn't interest me. So I was always kind of the tomboy. So like when I saw Sarah, I was like, oh yeah, like that's what I should be doing. Like that's how I would like to maximize like my form. And then the slightly shorter answer is I went through a really abusive relationship, and for a year when I was, I think, 22 or 23. Um, and I just had, over that entire time, I just had a total feeling of powerlessness. Like I felt very weak. I couldn't stand up for myself. And psychologically, like having muscle, I was like, oh, if I look like her, nobody's gonna mess with me like ever again. And I will make sure nobody messes with me. So that's the two answers.
Okay, beautiful, cool. All right, all right. So it sounds like you're again you're kind of doing everything on your own. You're learning now. When did you kind of decide that, hey, I want to maybe step on stage and take this just from learning about it and kind of liking this physique stuff and training like a bodybuilder? When did you actually decide, hey, I want to step on a stage, and walk us through that process?
So that was when I found out about Kai Green, my fiance. Um, he showed me a video of Kai Green, and it was his Kai Green's 2013 Prague EVL routine. I don't know the show, but it was that routine. And in that routine, he stands on his head. And I was like, how is this man, how is this 300-pound man standing on his head and doing flips and stuff? And so I looked into that, and I was like, oh, you can do routines. Um, and I was like, okay, that's for the men. But for the women, I didn't know about women's physique, so I was like, oh, there's only heels, because I only knew up to figure, because Sarah was a figure competitor. I didn't know about the other divisions, so I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll try the heels. They're not my thing, but I can make it work. But then I was preparing and researching like figure competitors, and then I came across physique on Instagram, and I was like, oh, there's a division with no heels. I'm in it. So I knew from like the get go that I was going to do women's physique. And bodybuilding, not really, like a little too big for me, but women's physique was like perfect.
So, what year did you decide to do your first competition, and how did that go? Walk us through that.
Oh boy, yeah, that was funny. I did my first competition in 2020. Hold on, what year is it? 2020? No, I'm sorry, 2021. 2021, yeah. It was the NPC Governors Cup. So the prep before that, it was kind of a mess. I didn't know that you needed a coach, so I was like, I'll just do it myself. So I did my own nutrition, I did my own training. I was definitely not lean enough, but I was lucky enough to work with several different coaches like sporadically throughout the year who kind of, they kind of pushed me in the right direction. They'd say, look into this. And so I would go look into what they said and adjust my training. And then I think 7 weeks out of the show, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm completely forgetting something. I was lucky enough to work with Ashley Jones, and she did the Olympia this year. I love her. So I worked with her for a little bit. At the time, I was not ready for the level of uh, detail and attention that she required of me. So I slacked off. I like ate off plan. I was like, oh, it's fine. I'll just do more cardio. Um, and so we decided to, call it quits because I wasn't that serious about it. But then I still wanted to do the show. So 7 weeks out, I found a local coach in the Bay Area, Mike Connell, and he's an IFBB pro as well. So he was like, all right, I'll get you to the show. I'll help you. So we did 7 weeks, and he gave me all of the prep necessities, and I won the show. But I was the only competitor in my division because it was a local show. Nobody else showed up. So by default, I won, and it was fun. It was cool to like win my first show. But I was also like, well, how would I have done if I had competition? And I knew that I could still probably win. So with that win, with winning the NPC Governors Cup, I qualified for nationals. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go for nationals. And I know there will be competition there. And if I can win that, I'll get my pro card. So, yeah.
Okay. Now at what point, Nicole, did you realize, was it so, I mean, did some of these people that you connected with in terms of coaches, or maybe some people at the gym, like when did you kind of realize like, hey, I may have something here in terms of being a competitive women's physique athlete? Like, because we all like it when we get maybe some positive feedback or encouragement from other people, because sometimes we just don't know, especially when you're kind of getting to bodybuilding. It's like, am I going to be good at this? Like, I mean, we don't really know sometimes ourselves. We need somebody from the outside to speak it into us, so to speak. So did you have some people that say, hey, Nicole, you've really got a great shot at this? And how did that kind of unfold, or at what point did that happen?
Ashley told me, she said, if you do everything I say, or if you get a coach who you do everything they say, you will turn pro in 2 shows. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I I just everybody who I met told me that I could do it. And I was like, oh, maybe I don't know, whatever. But the more people who said, yeah, you can do it, like, come on, like, why aren't you applying yourself? And I was like, okay, maybe I can. Um, yeah, so I've never had anything but like positive reinforcement from people who told me like, yeah, or people who I've told I want to do it, and they're like, yeah, absolutely. Like, why aren't you doing it already?
Okay, cool. Okay, so you won this Governor's Cup, and then that was in 2021, and then you decided that you were going to do nationals in 2022. Is that, am I following you correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
I
Okay,
I
just
I
hang on. So when was Governor's Cup last year? I just want to kind of get the time frame from Governor's Cup to national. So like at what point last year did you compete at the Governor's Cup? Like what month?
oh, um it was the December 2nd. So
Okay.
I had exactly a year
Okay.
between shows.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So go ahead. I didn't want to cut you off, but I just want to, for my sake and everybody else, I want to figure out what the time frame was. So you basically had a year. So walk us through then. Did you kind of do like a full blown off season? Did you stay with this local coach? Like walk us through from when you stepped off stage at the Governor's Cup to when you decided you're going to do nationals, and then how did you kind of go in terms of prep leading up to nationals? Like kind of walk us through the whole spiel.
Yeah. So actually, the moment I stepped off stage at the NPC Governors Cup, I asked my coach, "Hey, do I qualify for nationals?" And he was like, "Yes." And I was like, "Okay, we're doing it. We're doing it next year." And I did not know that there were like several different national shows throughout the year. So I thought NPC Nationals, the December one, I thought that was the only chance I was going to have. So I was like, fine. Like, I needed a year anyway. So I was like, this is perfect. So I took the whole month of December off and ate everything. Do not do that. I'm telling everybody, do not do that. Do not eat whatever you want. It will make things harder. But I did that. So in January, I decided, okay, going to kind of dial it down and, start eating more healthily. And I hired my coach. I didn't stay with the same coach. I got a different coach. His name is Danny Broadhurst. So I started with him in April, but the 4 months prior to that, January to April, I was doing my own nutrition. I was doing like a power building style training. So I knew I needed to put on a lot of leg muscle. So I was like squatting heavy, like 3 times a week, deadlifting, just the things that I knew how to do, but just a little more intelligently because I'd done more research. So and then in April, I started with Danny. And then I really got my diet under control. And from April until December, I did not deviate. I kept going, no cheat meals, no nothing, because I knew that that was the level I had to be at in order to win. So,
Okay, now before we get into nationals talk, Nicole, your current coach Dave, you said, is that his first name, Dave?
uh, Danny,
Danny. Okay, how did you
yeah.
decide that you're gonna have him be your coach?
So the gym I go to, it's kind of a hole in the wall, like bodybuilding gym. And the
Oh,
Um,
there we go.
from sorry about that.
Oh,
The
you're okay.
overall from the NPC Nationals in the wellness category, I trained with her. So she told me about Danny, and she was like, "Oh, why don't you work with him?" And I was like, "Okay," because I didn't know if there were any other like nutritionists in the area who did like plans versus macros. So I knew the difference by that time. I was like, "I need a plan." So she recommended him to me.
Okay, cool. Okay, now, so you decide you're going to do nationals. Why don't you walk us through then? When did you get into Orlando? How did peak week go? Why don't you just touch on that for a quick minute?
So we got, or my fiance and I got an invite from Kai Green to come and train at Redcon Gym. So we left early and we landed in Boca Raton the Tuesday before Nationals. So we knew there was going to be some extra travel involved. We brought food. We accounted for like, water retention and all of that. Um, so we flew in that night. We went to train at House of Steel in Boca Raton. It's a nice powerlifting gym. Had a great workout. Then we went to go visit Kai the next day. That was awesome. And he helped me out with a little like posing things. He fine tuned some stuff for me, gave me some advice. And then Thursday we flew to Orlando, and Friday we did the show.
Okay. Okay, now how did you get connected with Kai that he invited you to train with them?
So I posted a video of my first routine from the NPC Governors Cup because they didn't have me, well, because I was the only one, they didn't have me do like comparisons or anything. They were just like, do your routine. And I was like, okay. So, and I had worked on my routine for that show for like a whole year because I wanted it to be like artistic and interesting. So they were like, yeah, do your routine. So I did it, and somebody got a video, and I posted it, and I tagged Kai Green. I said, thank you for the inspiration. Like, you really like showed me what was possible. And he found it somehow. Well, not somehow, but he found it, and he was like, wow, this is awesome. Do you want to come out to Redcon and pose with me? And I was like, yes, yes, yes. But it ended up being that we couldn't get out there until December, so we just decided to leave early and make like a week of it. Just do that.
Cool. So how was that experience? Was it everything you were thinking it was going to be then with Kai? Because he seems like he's a very unique individual to say the least. So
Yeah, no, he's awesome. He's so nice, and he's so like his vision. I've rarely been in a space with somebody who I could just tell they had like an artistic vision, and I could kind of see what it was. Actually, I met Andy Stott, and I went to one of his concerts. He's the same way. Like when you meet him, you just know like you can tell like he may look ordinary, but there's like music coming out of his man's soul. So it was the same kind of thing, and we spent a long time just talking about art and music and what drives us to perform at our best. So it was exactly what I needed to just not be nervous at nationals and go in and have a great time.
cool, very cool. Okay, now I want to also ask you, Nicole, because you're such an artistic soul, and you have all of this experience with the dancing and the singing and all that. Do you feel like right at home then, like kind of with the bodybuilding thing? Because bodybuilding it can be very artistic. I mean, you literally are creating the physique that you want. Plus, then once you start competing, you get to do these posing routines. So you get to inject, music and choreography and all of that. So, I mean, do you really feel at home with being a competitive bodybuilder? Like, just talk about how your artistic soul kind of just maybe ties right in with bodybuilding.
Yeah, I absolutely feel at home. I feel like bodybuilding is just the culmination of everything that I've done. Like everything that I've experienced has helped me in this world. So like I'm exactly where I need to be. And like my vision for bodybuilding is to, bring it back to like ancient Greek, when it was cool to like enhance yourself, and there was the ideal male and female form. So and I'm just really into that. It's really exciting for me to realize and see that the sport is actually turning in a more artistic direction, like with people like Terrence Ruffin and Kai Green, and just people are getting more artistic with their posing. And I think that's where it needs to go, because then you kind of solve some of the awkwardness issues. Because I know like some of the male competitors are like, oh, I don't want to wear underwear on stage, but it's like, well, you know, if you're thinking of it like an art form, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah. So do you have like an idealistic physique for yourself personally, kind of in your mind, or have you like actually drawn it out on paper? Like what do you say about that?
I do have an ideal look that I'm going for. I'm useless at drawing, but honestly, I think that women's physique competitors, like we could focus more on our legs. So like kind of wellness style legs, but just with the big upper body. Because the wellness women, like they kill it. And because they're focusing only on their legs, everybody has crazy, crazy proportion, crazy legs. We can do that too. So I think that would be cool to kind of blend the two categories. And again, it would kind of maybe take away some of the awkwardness, because I know some competitors, they've expressed, oh, I don't feel feminine. And maybe if you're focusing on enhancing like your legs and your feminine qualities, you can bring that to women's physique and like kind of settle that as well.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so walk us through, first of all, what was your mindset going into nationals? I mean, literally before, I mean, nationals was your second competition ever. So what was your mindset? What was your personal goal? What did you want to accomplish at nationals? And then, well, why don't you answer that and then we'll go from there.
So going into the show, I really was like, I want to be top 5 so I could do my routine, because again, I worked all year on the routine, and I knew it. I knew that if I could do it, it would be interesting and people would pay attention. I mean, and I know how that sounds, but what I mean is I knew it would be a good show. Like I knew that it would be a good way to showcase a physique that I worked really hard for. So going into the show, I was like, I want top 5. I'm gonna do whatever I need to do to get top 5. I was really really nervous. It felt like piano recital jitters, but luckily I've been there before, so I knew how to manage it. And I just, you know, and what I do is I'll listen to music. I kind of keep to myself, or if I do talk to people, I'm like really hello, hi, and I just try and be like jokey a little bit, because humor is also a huge thing that helps me not be nervous. So like I'll make jokes. So I did a lot of that.
So peak week, did that go pretty well for you? I mean, were you pretty happy, you know, in terms of peak week going into prejudging?
Yes, kind of. I always think I could have been leaner, but that starts like earlier in the prep. So what I was able to do during peak week, yes, I was happy with it. And going into prejudging, when they did move me from the center, I was like, okay, I guess the judges like it too. So I'm not going to spoil it by eating a donut or whatever people do.
So, okay, so then talk a little bit about prejudging. How did that go, and what were your thoughts post prejudging?
I was really happy post prejudging. I didn't expect to get put in the center and not move. I really tried to like make friends and make friends with and meet the other ladies in my class. At least I'm class A, so we were all short, and we were going out first, and they were all really nervous. So I was like, okay, let's think about the food we like, and like what are you gonna do afterward, and what are you gonna eat. So it was really fun to like hear everybody's responses and, you know, get to know everybody a little better. Because once we all started talking and joking around, I know that it helped them with their nerves too. So like I think having a positive attitude and creating a positive atmosphere, like that just makes it easier and it's more fun. So.
Okay, cool. Okay, how did the night show go? And then talk a little bit about having the opportunity to compete in the overall, and then obviously you won the entire show. So I mean, let's chat about that.
So I was really happy I was actually even more nervous during the night show, because I knew I had made my goal, top 5, and I was like, okay, now I have to do the routine. But
once I was waiting to go up, I was like, okay, no, I've been here before. I've been like, it was the same kind of feeling I had before, like marching band shows, like because we would always line up at the end zone, and then the announcer would go, "And next, Homestead High School," and we would all be like, "Woo!" We'd all be a little jittery, but then we knew we just had to go game face on and just go. So I went back to that, and then I felt really comforted because it just reminded me of my childhood and just things that I practiced. Um, so when I went out to do my routine, it was I don't actually remember it really. Like there's two things I remember. I remember going out, and I remember starting my routine, and then I remember seeing Whitman. I don't know his first name, but the photographer
Will?
who does, yeah, Will Whitman. I saw him, and I was like, oh, that's the guy. And I was like, okay, no, focus. And then I was doing my routine, and I saw him take one of the pictures that he put up on his Instagram. I was like, oh, that's gonna be cool. But I was just so in the moment that it was just a thought, and I kept going. And then when I finished, I was like, I don't know if I won it, but I think I did pretty well. So
Cool.
yes.
So, at what point then after your routine did you know that you got first place in your division and that you were going to do the overall? Like, how did that unfold?
I I don't really remember that part actually. I think yeah, I know that I think they just called the ladies up from fifth place down,
Okay.
and then it was just me and Tay, who she got second. I really love her. It was me and her, and then I remember them calling second, and I was like, oh my god, I'm first, oh my god. So I was really happy about that. But yeah, that's the part where I don't quite remember, so I could be inaccurate there.
Okay. Do you remember the overall pose down and stuff, or was that kind of a blur
Yeah.
too?
Oh no, I remember that.
Okay,
That was
talk about that for a minute then.
yeah. So being positive with everybody. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work as well. Um, I think that we were all really nervous because it was the overall battle. So I did my same thing. I tried to chat with the other ladies, and like they were more quiet, which I get. So like I didn't push it or anything. Um, but I remember the pose down because I wasn't sure what to do. And then everybody started moving around. So I was like, oh, I'm supposed to move. So I was like, all right, what moves am I going to do? So I just was throwing out moves. And luckily, like, I like to freestyle also. So I kind of practiced it a little bit. So I knew vaguely what to do. But I had to kind of get out of the way of a couple of people. And that was a little nerve wracking because I was like, oh, okay, is everybody gonna see my poses? It's fine. But then I saw the video, and I was like, all right, so it was all good. So yeah.
And then did they just call you as the overall champion, or did they kind of go from fifth up like they did in your division? How did that work?
No, they just did the overall. So they said, and the overall trophy goes to competitor number 23. And I was like, oh, it's me. Yay.
You had to have had some I mean, what were your thoughts? I mean, obviously there's a lot that goes into stepping on any type of bodybuilding stage, but then to be able to be the overall winner out of the entire thing, like what were some of your thoughts? Maybe not necessarily in that moment, but maybe some of your thoughts after you've had some time to look back and reflect, like just kind of wrap up that entire experience for us, Nicole.
Well, when they called my name for the overall, I was like, yes, I was so happy because bodybuilding, like the this was the first thing where nobody kind of had to tell me to do it, and I realized that I really could do whatever I wanted to do if I thought about it hard enough. And I was like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. And I don't want to say that it's like manifesting, but it's just being intentional. You just have to, like, if you believe it, your body will follow. And that winning that and hearing my name called as the overall, I was like, that's it. So, and then also I knew, I was like, all right, so now I have to give back. Now I have to give back to the sport. Now I have to get more people into the sport, because everybody should experience something like this. Like, even if it's not like winning the overall, if you win your national show, or even if you just step on stage, like, everybody needs to experience accomplishing something that they really, really care about. So I immediately knew, like, I want to give this to other people. I want to share. I want to coach. I want to do everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Now, you said earlier, kind of like, you know, after you got out of college and stuff, and, you know, a few things didn't work out, but you were just kind of doing different jobs just, again, kind of pay the bills. And then you kind of said at one point that it wasn't really until bodybuilding that you really found, you didn't say purpose, but maybe a really clear direction for your life. I mean, am I saying that correctly? And if so, like, talk about like how bodybuilding and competing has kind of given you a clear direction or a very strong purpose for your life. Cause I think purpose is everything in life.
Yeah. Bodybuilding, it gave me discipline, honestly. I had to be disciplined when I was performing music, but a lot of that discipline was like external. So like, people would tell me that I had to do it, and then I'd be like, all right, whatever, I'll just do it. So I wasn't internally motivated, so I wasn't that disciplined. Bodybuilding gave me the internal discipline, because I was like, all right, if I want this, I have to not eat the donut. And for the first time, me wanting a long-term goal was more powerful than me wanting to eat, because I do like to eat. I really do. It's great. But you know, you can't eat everything. You can't eat like we do every day and expect to stay healthy. So when I got into bodybuilding, if at first it was just, you know, kind of a way to stay healthy, but then I realized, no, this can teach you like self-discipline, because when you get to like really deep in, like 2 weeks out, you just want to snap on people. I'm gonna be honest. Like, my patience was like this big, and I was like all the time. But you can't be that way. You have to be disciplined enough to control your emotions, control everything, and you have to still like keep going. And doing that and doing bodybuilding, it showed me all the benefits of having a disciplined life. And yeah, it's worth it. It's worth not eating a donut.
Yeah.
So.
1000%. What's what are your future plans? When would you like to step on a pro stage and make your IFBB pro debut, Nicole?
So I'm going to take another full year, and my pro debut will be probably mid to late 2024. I really want to do the Tampa Pro or the Savannah Pro, because I love that climate. And I'm sorry, I'm not ready to introduce cold as a variable in prep. Like, being cold, it makes it a lot harder for me to not eat. I mean, I won't eat obviously, but if the weather's hot, no problem. So I'm going to do that, and then hopefully, if I win my pro debut, qualify for 2024 Olympia, or qualify for 2025 Olympia, depending on when the Olympia is and when the last show before the Olympia is.
Okay. Well,
so
I think they said that the Olympia this next year is back in Orlando. Is that correct?
Yeah, first week of November.
Okay, so it's going to be back in some warm. Well, I guess Vegas is warm, but people don't realize Vegas. I mean, it's desert, so this time of the year it actually gets pretty cold. I think Orlando stays pretty warm year round. So if it stays in Orlando, that'd be great for you then, right?
Oh yeah. I love Florida. It was awesome, and it's so like folksy, and the people were super nice, and the food was good. I had a great time.
Yeah. Okay, now before we wrap it up here, Nicole, I want to touch on. I'm assuming, like most bodybuilders, you kind of want to bring up, you know, every body part. You just want to kind of get bigger overall. But and you mentioned legs. So what are the outside of legs? Like, what are some of the other areas of your physique that you're really going to, let's just say, hyper focus on in this year off before you make your pro debut?
So I got feedback from Sandy, the head judge, and she told me to bring up my back and my arms, which I completely agree with. I knew going into the show that I needed to have bigger arms. So So I knew post show, I was like, all right, once I'm done relaxing and, getting back to normal, it's going to be upper body like all year. So
Cool. What's
yep.
okay? Now you said you kind of did you've done kind of like power building throughout the years. Like, what's your training kind of like right now? Because a lot of people like to kind of geek out or nerd out, so to speak, on the training. So, are you going to kind of try to adjust or change your training from what you were doing like this year going into this next year? Are you going to kind of keep it the same? What's that going to look like?
Yes. So this next year is going to be volume, just lots and lots of volume. I've never been big on volume. My sets are usually 3 sets of 8 to 12, but my body's used to that. So this year it's about just shocking it and like producing differences. I was successful with that method with my hamstrings last year. I used to never train high volume hamstrings, but then I tried it and like my hamstrings just grew. And it's because my body wasn't used to training that way. So this coming year is going to be all of the different forms of training that I don't like and the forms that are just I've never done. So it's going to be a lot of discovery and trial and error, but I like doing that. So I'm excited.
Cool. And are you going to kind of do this on your own? Are you going to kind of continue to work with the coach that you worked with for nationals? What are you going to do with that?
No, I have another coach. Obviously, coaching is finding the right coach is difficult. You kind of have to go through a few people, and but the coach I work with now, his name is Ryan Silva. He's awesome. So he and I, we have a plan, and he's gonna get me where I need to go. And so yeah, it's gonna be cool.
Awesome. Okay, Nicole. I think we're gonna kind of end it right there. I'm gonna let you, if you have any final thoughts or any final words before I do a quick outro and I let you go, I'm gonna turn it over to you. I want you to make sure you give us your Instagram and any shout outs, anything like that. Platform's yours, girl, and then I'll do a quick outro, okay?
Okay. Yeah, well, like I said earlier, I do believe that everybody, male, female, whatever, once in your life, like maybe try a show, try bodybuilding, try like implementing that discipline, and just see where it takes you and see if that will be the thing that unlocks like the greater purpose in your life. Because I see so many people, and my friends have shared this with me, that they just feel purposeless in life, and I get that. And I spent so long feeling purposeless that because I found something that gives me purpose, I want to give that to everybody. So everybody should do a show. And my Instagram is Nicole Moves Weights. So it's one word and then the underscore. And those are also my initials, NMW. So it's a little play on my name. And let's see. I really want to start a YouTube channel. It's in the works. Cool. So I'm going to be doing that. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. I appreciate you. Like I said before we turned on, I think I tried finding you on Instagram, but I typed in your name and your handle's different. So you actually reached out to me. So thank you for reaching out, Nicole. That's kind of like one of my goals going into 2023 is to kind of, expand the platform of this podcast, not just focus mostly on males, but start getting more of you females on and give you guys your due shine, because you guys are putting in the work just like the dudes. And I appreciate what you guys are doing. So thank you so much for sharing your story. Okay, Nicole?
Thanks for allowing me to. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. All of you who are tuning in to another episode of Behind the Muscle podcast, I just want to say thank you so very much. If you guys have not done so already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button in regards to BTM on YouTube. And then also take this episode with Nicole. Please share it on your Instagram stories. Make sure you tag Nicole, tag Behind the Muscle podcast, so that we know you listened specifically to this episode and found great value in it, in which I know you did. And then finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.